We learned that Steve Rodriguez's time at Baylor has come to an end. Stepping down, was going to be fired if that weren't the case. I think that's pretty obvious at this stage. They went 0-2 in the Big 12 tournament after eking out a spot in the 8th seed. And they needed to win a game, and they won a game, and it fell their way, and they got into the tournament, but then proceeded to go 0-2, losing to TCU and Oklahoma State. And that was all she wrote. That was the end of the Baylor baseball season, not with a bang, but with a whimper. And just the way things have kind of gone all year, we knew that something was going to have to break one way or the other for Baylor baseball moving forward. And, well, the break is that Steve Rodriguez, I guess, saw the writing on the wall as well and went ahead and, announced it, or I guess told Baylor that he would be stepping down. So I guess that saves everybody the trouble of the exit interviews and then trying to figure out what they wanted to do, how to get it turned around for next year. Instead of trying to turn it around, they're going to basically start anew with a new coach. There's already, names that are being thrown around by people. But again, it's been, just now about 24 hours since the news broke. So I don't think, the search is going to be wrapping up, in the next couple of days. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about candidates, and I'm sure there's some people we're not thinking of if it's a typical Mack Rhoades interview. But, it is what it is for baseball. About a 500 season just throughout. They just hung around 500, got into Big 12 play, lost some series they should have won. Oklahoma comes to mind as one that they should have, been able to take. But instead, whether it was pitching or it was injuries or what have you, it just wasn't working for Baylor baseball. And after several seasons now at the helm, Steve Rodriguez is off to his next great adventure, and Mack Rhoades has a baseball coach to hire.
Yeah, he's got a decision to make. And, if there's one thing I trust, it's Mack Rhoades getting a coaching search decision right. Like, I have the utmost confidence in what he's going to do. He's going to find a really good coach who's going to help bring this program back. But I do want to take a minute and kind of talk a little bit about Steve Rodriguez for a second, his career at Baylor, because he did have to come into a situation where the recruiting kind of barrel was not good for Baylor, and he had to turn things around. He did that in pretty quick fashion, and by the time 2017 rolled around, they were a competitive program. They made a regional. They had a really nice season, had a really competitive RPI inside the top 20 that year. And then in 2018, they were very good again. 2019 was going to be their best team, it seemed like, and just things unraveled. And during those 3 years is where, for me, they had 3 really good teams and could never get out of a regional. And that was really hard to watch. They had opportunities. They had good enough teams to do it, but it just didn't happen in postseason play. And it felt like down the stretches of many of those seasons, things just did not shake their way. Injuries were a problem, and I understand all of that. Now, 2020 rolls around, and I really feel like that was going to be a pretty good team. They were 10-6, had just come off of the Shriners Hospital Classic, in which they beat Missouri, LSU, and Arkansas, 3 top 25 teams in a row that weekend. Came out, beat Cal Poly in a series, and were about to take on Grand Canyon, and the season got canceled. And I felt like from that moment on, they just could not replenish the talent. They could not get to the point where they were healthy enough to compete consistently. And then these past 2 years happened, and it's just really unfortunate. It felt like things were all kind of trending there for Baylor to really be a juggernaut and really be a team that could make it to a super regional every year. But things didn't shake that way. His postseason problems were well known and well documented, and now you're at a point where you miss postseason 2 years in a row, and it's hard to come back from that.
Yeah, it is, and I've been saying the phrase they had no juice. I've been saying that over and over again now for several weeks, and I think that was more apparent than ever there at the end. Just a team with no gas left in the tank and just not a lot of fight left in them, and unfortunate to see the season end. Just kind of, it's over, like almost unnoticeable in a way for many out there. But now it's on to a coaching search. So I know the easy name to throw out there, and it's been thrown out there a million times already, is Mitch Thompson at MCC, formerly on the Baylor staff. Kid goes to Baylor, a lot of success at the junior college level. I don't think it's quite as simple as that. His name's been thrown out there, and I haven't really taken a lot of time to dig too much into who else would be potentially a candidate, but we've got time for that. I don't expect this to be by next week we're talking about the brand new baseball coach, but anything on your end in terms of the coaching position and Anybody that you have in mind?
I just don't think it's going to be an obvious name. I really don't. It has never been as simple as, oh, the first name leaked is the guy who it's going to be. And a lot of people have talked about Mitch Thompson. But again, I feel like, at least in my opinion, that's more of Baylor fans wanting him to come to Baylor, you know what I mean, and be back at Baylor and be a guy who kind of continues this trajectory of bringing in coaches like that. And honestly, I think it's really funny because Steve Rodriguez was not even close to being a name that was mentioned often for the Baylor job the first time around. And just Mack Rhoades' track record tells me that it's not going to be an obvious choice. It's going to be a guy that's kind of Mack thinking outside the box, going and finding the right culture fit, which Steve Rodriguez was. And I think he's going to be able to do that. And as far as names go, you know, I like Dan Hefner, the coach at Dallas Baptist. He's kind of the guy who they've been really good, really consistent. He would make a lot of sense. But again, I think he's probably far too obvious as well, much like Mitch Thompson. And so, I think it's going to be someone that no one's talking about currently that Mack Rhoades goes out and hire. But one thing I can tell you is the way Mack Rhoades goes through coaching searches, I have a ton of faith that he's going to get this right because he's gotten it right every single time up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I was thinking of the coaches that he's hired and whatnot, and it's been pretty solid. And there's still, some holdovers from the previous era as well that were hired. And Steve Rodriguez was one of those, but now Mack Rhoades will have more of an imprint on this athletic department, hiring his first baseball coach. So he's hired a women's basketball coach, he's hired a track coach, he's hired a couple football coaches, so on and so forth. And now, men's tennis he hired, and I'm sure I'm missing one or two, but now it's time for a baseball coach. So we've certainly got used to searches around here, and we'll see how different this one is from, replacing a women's basketball coach or a football coach, I guess. But I felt like it was time. I don't know how you could have come back and ran it back last year, even if you'd have said like, oh, we've gone in the transfer portal and we've upped the pitching and we've changed the way that we do our throwing programs, or like there was just nothing that was going to, I think, flip the opinion or energize what is kind of a very flatline fan base at this moment. If you had brought Steve Rodriguez back, there's nothing I think you could have said that would have been like, you know what? Yeah, let's get into it. One more run. Let's go see. I think everybody was just, even Steve Rodriguez was just kind of like, yeah, this is the end here.
Yeah, and I also feel like if you brought him back for next year, it'd be constantly, every time he lost, fire him. Why is he still here? And I just don't think that's a good environment, nor a conducive environment, especially during a baseball season that always has ebbs and flows. There's a lot of highs, a lot of lows, and you got to be able to mellow those out and have a fan base that's supportive of that. And I overall think he lost the fan base, and I think when you lose the fan base, it's really hard to get that back. And I think everyone that I talked to was pretty much ready to kind of move on, and it seems like Steve Rodriguez was as well.
Yeah, anything as far as just the things you're looking for in a new head coach?
Yeah, I think for me, a big thing, and I don't even know if this is controllable, but they need to figure out the strength and conditioning staff, because this team has been marred by injuries too many times. And I think that it's hard to blame a specific person, but what I can tell you is, Vic Valoria on the football side did a great job, his first year. And I do think that when you have a specific strength and conditioning program that really focuses on certain things, especially keeping pitchers healthy, I think there's a lot of set up for success. And I think that's one thing that the next coach has to bring with him is an elite strength and conditioning staff to make sure that these guys stay healthy, because the baseball season is grinding, it's grueling. And for pitchers, when you lose one of your star pitchers, it's really hard to rebound from that, as we've seen with this Baylor program. So I want that. Also, just honestly would like a guy who's going to come in and really focus on making baseball fun again at Baylor. Making the environment fun, creating some juice, and really going out and being active on social media, being a face of this so-called franchise and this program. And I just think it's one of those must-haves with this new hire, is to bring excitement and also basically show up and say, hey, Baylor, hey, Mack Rhoades, this is why we need more facilities. This is why we need X, Y, and Z. And you do that by winning, but also being a guy that everyone in the fan base loves, the players love. And so I'm hoping they bring a guy with that kind of energy as well.
Yeah, I still remember driving back from like a radio remote and hearing Steve Rodriguez on what was Smokey and Paul's show back then, doing his very first interview after Ian McCaw had hired him. And it does kind of seem like a long time ago, but it's also kind of weird just now look up, snap your fingers, and, Steve Rodriguez is on his way out. That's just how life just passes you by. So that's who I've pretty much known as the head coach for a majority of the time that I've been around Waco, which is quite a while now. And I think initially there was a little bit of buzz, but you're right. Like, you look around at Oklahoma winning the Big 12 tournament, or even, Texas, even though it's not been quite the year that they thought because they've had injuries or whatever. Oklahoma State, TCU
with a first-year head coach.
Yeah,
after replacing a legend.
They're all having fun, and they're all playing in big games, and there's big crowds, and there's excitement, and that hasn't been the case around here for a while. So I think you're dead on with whoever comes in needs to really create some more excitement, because Baylor fans have proven that they love baseball in the past, and they'll support baseball, but you got to give them a reason to, and I don't think that reason was there the last year or so. So, Steve Rodriguez out as Baylor baseball coach, and the search begins to find his replacement.